Hello and welcome to Pulsecast, the podcast exploring the key trends in media technology. Today, we will talk about AI and creativity with Alex Timbs, who is a business development and alliances manager for media entertainment at Dell Technologies. Thank you very much, Alex, for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Lorenzo. I look forward to it.
So let's start from AI, and I wanted to start from the relationship between AI and creativity. This is a topic we've often talked about, how the two are interrelating with each other. What do you think about the impact that AI has had on creativity so far?
Well, I mean, it's a sensitive topic in media and entertainment in particular. So, I don't want to go too deep into the politics of it. My view about it really is, and I would summarize it as such, that I think it's an accelerative force and a forcing function that's driving creative innovation and business transformation across lots of different verticals. Media and entertainment are not immune to it, and I actually think that media and entertainment have a lot to gain from it. And it really goes beyond just a fleeting technology and the hype, and there is a lot of that as well. And I think it's fundamentally a paradigm shift that allows us to tap into human potential and operational efficiency. And it does that through granting the individual, or teams of people for that matter, the ability to really rapidly access and manipulate information. And that can be information from, entire libraries, every written word, down to individual pixels, on an artist screen. And I think that it's not the AI and the technology itself is not the focus in media and entertainment, but I think it's really the outcomes and the opportunities that this technology allows us to access. And it does that, I think, fundamentally by reducing the risk of taking, sorry, I should start again. It reduces the risk in doing anything. It does that because it's so easy, and it reduces the friction with which someone can test something or play with it. And I think it's a little akin to the shift from the film camera to digital cameras. I remember with film cameras, and I don't know about you, but I was always very cautious about setting up a shot because there was a significant cost in doing that and or failing in setting something up properly. And it would take time for you to develop it. And there was a lot of great things about film, and there's definitely something amazing about analog. But digital, you just keep your finger on the trigger. So it allows people to take a lot more risk with very small financial burden to do that. And I think that just allows or supports creativity in general across the spectrum.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So you think it's more generally an enabler of creativity, and some people think, and I find this interesting, that as everyone is using AI, there will be a sort of homogenization of content. So everyone using the same tools and everyone producing similar content because the algorithms are similar as well. What do you think about this view?
There's definitely a risk of that. If everyone's using the same tools that are trained on the same data, and people aren't, creating their own weights and LoRa's and fine tuning or really deep tuning a model, then you're going to get a very sort of similar outcome. I think what it comes down to is that the human, it needs to be in the mix. This is not creativity for technology's sake. It's creativity for humans, and we will very quickly shy away from or not want to consume content that's all the same. We get bored very easily, and I think there is a genuine shift, at least from what I'm seeing at the moment, where the consumer, whether it be my teenage kids or, whether it be myself, are quite bored with a lot of content because it is being produced on an industrial scale. A lot of it doesn't differ dramatically. A lot of it doesn't have a point of interest. And so I think AI, not wanting to say it's just another tool, because it goes well beyond being another tool, but it really is it's a new paintbrush, if you will, or a new a new artist's pencil, if you want, and it just gives that creator the ability to do a lot more in a very short period of time, and to explore their own ideas without, as I said before, without too much risk of money, time, etc.
Yeah.
But that tool is only going to, be as dynamic or as interesting or diverse as the person that's A, driving it, and B, the people that have fine-tuned it or trained it on particular looks, artistic looks, etc. So there's creativity that needs to be behind the actual tools themselves to actually get to the point of where they're able to be used in a manner that creates something unique. And so that it is an art, and I think there's creativity in the AI itself and the way that that's trained, tuned, used, and also being knowledgeable enough on where to use it and where not to use it.
Thanks, Alex. I think AI, of course, is having an important impact on creativity at the moment, and will have an impact in the future. It's impossible to have a crystal ball and predict the future, because everything is so changing so rapidly in the AI realm. But we know it's going to be a major force. But we also know, and sometimes the two of us talk about it, that there are other factors influencing creativity, psychological and cultural factors as well. I know you have an opinion about this. Can you tell us a little bit what you think about the other factors that are influencing creativity from your perspective, even before the advent of AI?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the psychosocial, cultural elements to creativity. Just thinking back or referencing my career, I think that there has been a huge shift from small houses that grew into bigger houses that were doing a lot of work, fee-for-service vendors that did some amazing work, had a lot of creative people in there, and they grew kind of organically, and this industry expanded, both VFX and animation. And in doing so, it reached a point where it was industrialized. It was really, this was driven by demand for this content, demand for VFX, demand for animated features and shorts for that matter. And so pipelines were developed to pump this stuff out really quickly. And in doing so, there has been some risk of sort of standardization of look and less risk taking, certainly as we've seen in Hollywood. Hollywood likes to know that they're going to make a return on investment, and rightfully so. And so they want to back proven properties. They want to back content that they know they're going to get a return on. And so I think this industrialization, combined with a risk-adverse industry, an industry that wants to obviously make profit, which is what it should be doing, what happened there was it kind of cornered a lot of that creativity, and I think there was less risk-taking, and we started to see less diversity, I think, in the content, I guess. And there was a perception, I think, by consumers that they weren't getting interesting content. And we saw a lot of that throughout the COVID era, I suppose. There was a lot of sort of struggle, obviously, to get content made. There was a lot of rehashing of titles and storylines throughout that. And I think the end result was that we started to lose risk-taking, and as a consequence, diversity in ideas and diversity in content as a result of that. And in addition to that, the psychosocial elements of, in a post-COVID or throughout COVID, meant that there was the individuals that were creating this content, I think to a certain extent had less ability to express those ideas. Things were narrowed, the world was narrowed for a number of years. And we sort of also had, during that period, Hollywood strikes, And we had obviously the challenges of running businesses throughout COVID. Some of them didn't make it, unfortunately, and that really pushed the industry back many years in terms of the stream of content that was coming through these pipelines. A lot of it got dropped. Some of it got pivoted to other things, reprioritized. And I don't see that the industry is fully recovered from that yet. And I'm not sure it will. I think what we're embarking on now is a new version of the industry. Hollywood's changing. The way that we make films is changing. The people that own the rights to these properties is changing. We have a lot of power concentrated with tech companies. Tech companies now are content creators, and they own the idea all the way through to the creation and execution of that idea through to distribution on the screens, that consumers watch it on. And so all of that is creating these unique pressures and psychosocial elements that do impact and influence the ideas that get to the actual final screen. There's a risk there that we continue to be narrow and we don't express and have an opportunity to test new ideas. But by the same token, I'm seeing some customers and new studios pop up on the smaller side of things that are really adopting this new technology that we've already touched on, generative AI, real-time virtual production. And they're aiming to be able to create their own ideas, to own that and do business to business, and be able to sell that directly to, content providers such as Netflix, Amazon, etc. And so there's a new sort of hope there, I suppose, where we'll start to see these new industries, new risk takers, if you will, popping up here and there. And hopefully that'll have a positive net impact on the diversity of content and the risk taking, if you will, in terms of creative risk taking in the industry, because of that reduced cost of taking those risks, the reduced cost of making a film, and the reduced cost of distributing that content.
Thanks, Alex.
Long-winded answer, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. I was about to comment on, what you said at the end, the fact that this links very well with what you said about AI, in the sense that AI can be considered as a force, as you said, a force for democratization as well. So more people having access to the tools, and I think now the definition of quality at the consumer level is changing as well. It's not just quality, what has been done with shiny tools, but it's also the substance of the content, which is important, and the actual content is is not that different from one platform to the other, and it is, but the consumer doesn't really care in most cases. This is my experience, at least, from what I've seen. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think that, well, first of all, there's definitely an opportunity for aggregators of that content, because, I don't know about you, but all these subscriptions everywhere, and having to, I can get to the point where I give up looking for content, because I'm spending so long jumping between platforms trying to find something that fits what I'm looking for. So I think there's a huge opportunity in aggregation and searchability and recommendation engines. That's AI in and of itself in that. There's definitely, we talk about democratization of content a lot. And that's definitely the case with the power with which this technology delivers the individual. So again, it's about giving the individual the tools or the power to take more risk. Previously, a VFX film, for example, would require hundreds and hundreds of artists and require tens of millions of dollars worth of infrastructure to get that to something that's acceptable for theatrical release. There's been a few examples over the recent years where really smart people, a very small number of people, have gotten together and produced incredibly, high quality results, theatrical released content with less than 20 people. And they're doing that by, appropriately using the technology and obviously doing it in a smart manner. So that's kind of the democratization. It means that more people with ideas now have access to the tools, the paintbrushes, the pencils, if you will, digital, that are needed to create these films and get them to the level that a consumer wants to consume them. At the same time, there's new types of content being created. I mean, you've seen all of the weird temporal stuff that happens with generative AI, the fluid like effects, especially as it's transitioning. It doesn't quite understand, or it doesn't understand three-dimensional space properly. So a lot of this stuff is, at least that's used in films, is being, is 2.5D. It's being projected onto 3D objects. But there's a whole new genre of content. There's people that like watching all of this temporal stuff, this fluid, and there's some crazy, videos that I've seen that are really kind of cool. And it is a net new type of content that's come out of this technology. So it's not just, the technology creating the stuff that we used to do. It's creating new stuff, new interesting stuff that's kind of a side effect, I guess, if you will, of the way that it works. So yeah, there's the democratization. There's obviously the risk of, these more limited channels of distribution and creation, creating stuff that isn't that interesting. But at the same time, there's all these smaller players, the individuals, these new startups that are, adopting this technology that now have enough power to express their ideas, as crazy as they are. And the one thing that does pop into my mind, again, sorry for talking so much.
No,
I remember asking a director who worked on a major film Hollywood release last year, and I said, what, last person on the planet I thought would be adopting this technology. This director was very much about the actors and being present there and directing in that way, and not, I wouldn't have pictured him adopting this technology. But he said, look, the value to me, when I said, why are you using this technology? He said, the value to me is I get to make the film before I make the film. And that allows me to have enough context to express my crazy ideas that I could never verbally articulate, or even get a storyboard artist to draw something that I could take to the studio or take to someone with the venture capital to get that approved, to get that money to make that film that I wanted to make. This technology allows me to, again, take that risk, to be able to take the risk, express my ideas.
Because of basically being able to understand the feasibility of something which wasn't possible before, basically.
Exactly. I mean, there's stuff in everyone's head that is crazy. I mean, everyone has the occasional crazy dream, or they have this crazy idea that, oh no, I'm never, that's never going to be something.
That, I guess, at the highest level.
Yeah.
It's interesting you said, there will be, I'm not sure what it looks like, but there will be like a next phase for creativity because of these tools, kind of influenced by these tools as well. But there's something else you mentioned there about infrastructure. I want to talk a little bit about that too, because AI has influenced infrastructure investment enormously. For example, we've seen how much investment big technology players have put in data centers. And I wanted to ask you what you think about the impact that AI has had on infrastructure, what effects is caused on infrastructure.
I mean, look, money, big capital, the money that's needed to fund a lot of this only moves in that direction if there's value there. I mean, money does not just get spent for no reason. So there's value there, right? And some of that can be potential for operational efficiency. Some of it can be a desire to put a cap on cost of revenue. A lot of companies that we speak to, it's not about reducing costs or reducing people or any of that stuff. It's really about removing the risk of, runaway costs. Things are very expensive in this current environment. So money's investing in that technology because it sees a return on that investment. It's not just money flowing into nothing. And we've certainly seen a huge amount of investment in that space. A lot of that is really the big tech companies. It's X, it's Microsoft and others that are investing in this technology. A lot of it from us, from Dell Technologies. A lot of it obviously powered by NVIDIA, the world leader in GPU. And So there's definitely a huge money that's gone in there, but it's only going there because there's a perceived return on investment or an actual return on investment. And a lot of that's being driven into training these models, which are obviously very expensive. But there's still an investment at the individual level as well. Like speaking from my own experience, I bought a more powerful machine than I would normally buy, both GPU and CPU for home, so that I can run a lot of these models myself locally. And why would I do that? I mean, I'm doing that because I'm really curious about how they work. I'm curious about the outcomes they can deliver, and I'm really curious about how efficiently they can actually use hardware. And I've been really blown away by how much you can achieve even on a standard machine with just CPU, with a model that's been tuned and optimized. And there's a lot of them out there, and the open source community is enormous. But long story short, huge investments in that technology, but only because there is a return on that investment. And it doesn't matter whether it's the massive tech companies that are doing it to train new models, or whether it's a small to medium-sized enterprise that's doing it because it's going to give them a suite of tools that's going to control costs. It's going to give them a suite of tools that's going to allow them to try new things, to automate pipelines, and to expand their risk-taking, if you will, particularly in creative endeavors, like we've said. Or, as I said, down to the individual level, wanting to spend a little bit more on infrastructure at home than what they otherwise would, because the tool set that they're going to get is going to open up new horizons for them at an individual level. So yeah, it's all the way from cloud through to down to the individual. There's definitely there has been a shift in where capital is being spent. Because there is a return on investment there.
Do you think this is sustainable, or?
Well, I mean, technology is generally deflationary. We've seen the cost of running these technologies, of tuning and training these models, of running them at home. The cost is coming down rapidly, as one would expect it to. But I think some of the risks that exist is obviously not getting the return that you expected. Really, that's down to the individual, business strategy and what they were hoping to get out, what the goals are. Where we've seen some risk is that companies haven't really set their objective or their goals about why AI. Some people very early on, in particular, ran out pretty quickly without having that goal. So it's very important, I think, to have an objective as to what business challenge is this aiming to solve or to optimize. Very important to have that in mind, and be able to match the right kind of AI and technology and infrastructure that's needed ahead of time, as opposed to kind of reacting to it. So I think you need to think strategically, and particularly if you need a lot of it. I mean, there's big wait times for some of this stuff, so you need to kind of be out in front, knowing or sort of forecasting what you need. There's also the storage consideration, right? So, look, again, speaking personally, I've been creating images left, right, and center. I've created a LoRa. I've fine-tuned some weights on myself, photos of myself, of certain subjects and styles, which you can put in front of the model. And in doing that, I've created some really cool, zany, crazy images, and I've gone nuts. I'm queued them up, and I do me 10 different versions, with slightly different starting points, so that you get these very different outcomes. And that's filled my drive up. I've created a lot of very high resolution images. Some of them I've up-resed using AI again to fill in pixels, and again creating bigger and bigger images. I suppose there's a risk there where we're already reaching exponential data growth out there. A lot of our customers in relation to storage, are wanting to sort of regain some control over that. And it's a lot of it's about deprecating the data you do have, making sure that the data you have and keep is valuable. And so customers and individuals, I suppose, are also needing to find automated ways of managing, classifying, tagging, and making decisions around, the data they keep, because it's I don't think necessarily that is sustainable in the direction it's going. And the reason I say that is, when looking at my career, when I started, the first feature animation I worked on was 64 terabytes on disk, the final images and dependencies. And to create that film was 2,000 cores, CPU cores, roughly. Towards the end of my tenure, at Netflix Animation, formerly known as Animal Logic, one of the last films I worked on there was 5.5 petabytes, the final images and dependencies, and I think it required, in terms of physical cores, was between 70 and 80,000 cores at peak for a short period of time. Huge difference here in requirements around compute and storage. So getting much more expensive. At the same time, budgets are coming down, right? So the budget of that last film that I worked on was about a third the budget of the first one I worked on.
Yeah.
And another extreme example, not the company I worked for then, it's another company, I won't say who, they worked on a major animated feature and their final images and dependencies was 25 petabytes. 25 petabytes. And they required over 1 million CPUs, vCores. So I think it was around 900 to 1 million physical cores. I think it was 1.4 vCores, something like that. Crazy numbers. I don't think that's sustainable. Personally, I mean, I know the cost of this stuff and it's very expensive. Great for Dell and other, technology manufacturers, but, not necessarily sustainable from a customer perspective. So I think that these tools are not just about generating the content, it's also about managing it. Using AI, using vectors, using weights, using high dimensional space reporting, and the relationships between data to make decisions and to drive automation, including the deprecation or deletion of data, the archiving of data, the movement of data. That's going to be critically important as well. And there's one other thing that I would add is that this technology, because it, like that film camera to the digital camera example, these tools allow you to create stuff on the fly. We're getting really close to sort of real-time frame rates with this technology when you've got enough, GPU. And I think that's going to allow us the opportunity to create content on the fly. Ultimately, be able to give the consumer the control and the power to make decisions about what they want to watch, what it looks like, what the story is. Choose your own adventure, if you will. But it also gives you enough power to create the images you want when you need them, and not necessarily have to spend a huge amount. The amount of money that we used to spend on CPU-based image generation calculations. I think GPU and obviously having enough VRAM now in that and being able to load entire scenes in there, that's driving efficiencies. That's giving us the ability, the power to create images on the fly. So I think that's actually, there's two things at play here. First is the tsunami of data that's being created because it's so easy to do it. And at the same time, the technology itself is giving us new tools because of that power and that capability to only create what you need when you need it at the point it's required, and also to manage the data that you do have or do create in much better ways because you are able to make more informed decisions about the type of data and how it relates to everything else.
Thanks, Alex. No, that's all interesting. You talked about risk, and one of the risks we often talk about is security, which maybe sometimes it's a little bit disregarded by the industry as well. What do you think about the security in terms of its position in the ranking of priorities of media companies? Do you think it has declined compared to the past? He has increased? And what's the impact of AI as well on security? Because we know that AI is reshaping pretty much everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was from the start of COVID, cybersecurity was sort of in the top 2 rank in terms of importance in business. And then, the COVID stuff happened and, companies scrambled to support remote workflows. There was it was basically, what do we do? We have to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Let's make a whole lot of decisions. Security went way down. And I think some of the data that I did get access to, which was pretty sparse, it very rapidly went to fifth or sixth priority, down the list. Everything else was about how do I support my workforce in a geo-distributed fashion, the psychosocial impacts of all that disruption. How do I ensure continuity of my workforce? And, how do I manage the efficiency losses and blah, blah, blah. And so it understandably dropped down the priority list. I don't think it's really, from what I've seen anyway, it really hasn't come back up that priority list. There's been other things that have now jumped out, like AI, generative AI, that a couple of years ago wasn't even on the radar, and, surveys results from the likes of Devoncroft, for example, but that's jumped up, to second place now, I think below IP from last year. And I wouldn't be surprised this year if that was top place, because of the competitive advantage it can give you, the efficiencies, etc. So it's understandable why business is reprioritizing things. But at the same time, the same technology that's now of interest and has taken the second or the first place in a lot of these businesses in terms of priority business strategy, is also driving a whole new range of risks. So we have this AI threat space, if you will, now that's off the charts in terms of the actual risk. I mean, the risk profile is gone up exponentially, with the priority of generative AI in most of these companies. And that's because it gives a level of automation and tools to malicious actors. And because it can do things so quickly. I'll give you an example of I think the stats I read the other day was spear phishing attacks, done by a human, traditionally have 12 to 15% from memory. Don't quote me on that. Success rate. People were getting pretty good, and the end user protection platforms were getting pretty good at, hey, this is probably a spear phishing attack. They're getting good at identifying it. The AI generated stuff is in excess of 50% success rate. Why is that? Well, it's because it can pull in all these different data points in real time or close to it by scraping LinkedIn and emails and Facebook and everything, and collating all of that and coming up with a campaign based on a whole range of those data points. And it can deliver such a convincing attack that you've really got to be careful these days. And I've seen it. I've been attacked myself numerous times, and this stuff is so good. It is so good. It is so targeted, and it can be real time. And there's examples, that I won't necessarily share now, but there are examples of companies losing money, lots of money, through these AI threat vectors, mainly through social engineering. Because they're so good at pulling that information in and getting so targeted. And there's other companies I know of that have come close, but it's only been through, employees kind of going, hang on a minute, this doesn't quite add up. And so I think that cyber needs to be reprioritized. I think it definitely needs to get back up there with strategic investment in AI. Sorry?
Do you think it will be reprioritized?
It'll be forced, I think.
Okay.
I think the hand will be forced because there will be too much. There'll be growing risk there. There'll be growing exposure, and it'll have to be reprioritized, I think. I don't think that the approach to dealing with this risk changes much. Yes, there are new tools. Again, it's a war, AI fighting AI, to identify what's real, what's not, because it's real time. But it's fundamentally, in my mind, in my experience, about culture, and it's about training. And we can't stop doing that just because there's, some additional, we're shifting business priorities. I think cyber really needs to be right up there as a non-negotiable. And it doesn't have to be a heavy lift, always. It doesn't have to be expensive. It is, as I said, it's about training people what to look for, knowing that the individual is responsible for so much of a successful cyber defense strategy. Dell itself is very, very conscious of that, and obviously leads with culture training and the latest tools. But we also have we have a lot of customers that are very interested in how they can improve their cyber status. That's why we create some sort of media specific documents and reference architectures and that kind of thing. They've been of interest to a lot of customers recently, particularly smaller customers that haven't had the experience or don't know where to start. So, look, I would just encourage anyone that's listening to rethink or re-look at your cyber strategy and work out where it sits in terms of priorities. And I don't think it needs to necessarily be on its own, but I think it needs to be adjacent. One of the top, at least the top three, needs to be in the top three in terms of business priority. And have some people that are focused on it. Don't make it something that's, just discussed around a board table that doesn't have any outcomes. Empower people to make some real change, to do some training, to make it a top-down cultural imperative to have a strategy around cyber.
Yeah, and I think it's super important. And now I was asking about if it will become a more important priority, because it feels to me but I feel that we're getting stuck in this competition game into who has the shiniest tools, and we may forget about security. But maybe it will become more important out of necessity, as you say. Finally, Alex, one last thing. This year, we talked about AI, creativity, data. What's your kind of prediction for AI this year? What do you think will be the focus, the main focus of media companies this year, if you have to make a prediction?
Oh, look, I've been looking at the macroeconomic conditions and the challenges out there. Every business leader is going to be wanting to know how AI can contain costs. I think, and it's not necessarily about driving the human costs down. It's not necessarily about that. It's about creating a level of certainty by automating repetitive tasks, by improving efficiencies within the business, getting people information, the right information that they need a lot quicker, being able to summarize and distill information a lot quicker, so the individual themselves is more efficient, more capable, more informed than they otherwise would have been. So, look, I think that we're going to see continued deflation of this technology. I think it's going to continue to become more accessible, more widespread in its use. You can already see it starting to penetrate your life at many different levels, from AI assistants through to tools that businesses are making readily available and encouraging employees to use, down to the individuals playing with this and looking for new business ideas. We're seeing a lot of people come up with some incredible business ideas and executing on those business ideas at the speed of a mouse click. And that's AI is letting these. It's not just about creativity, is the point I'm trying to make there. It's about business strategy. It's about being able to test an idea very quickly in how you're going to run a business. If you've got enough data points, you could potentially back test strategies within your own organization. So it's also about business intelligence and about testing your strategies. So accessing and manipulating information, whether it be pixels or data, and much faster rates in order to contain costs and remain competitive, I would say is going to be the focus. I'm going to see a lot more deflation within the industry. We're going to see a lot more models that are open sourced or commercially available. And we're going to see the consumer, I think, continue to reap the benefits of this technology in the coming years. But it'll be very interesting. I'm very much looking forward to some of the trade shows like NAB and IBC this year to see where things are at. It's always an interesting gauge of where the industry, at least, is thinking this is going. yeah, I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
But I do think the trends are going to continue to see that deflation and that adoption of that technology, just simply because it allows us to have access to information and use that information faster than ever before.
Great. Thanks, Alex, for being with us today.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.